In a WTF interview podcast, Eric Idle, who was friends with both Harrison and Bowie, talked about how he tried to get George Harrison to meet David Bowie. George responded by pronouncing Bowie's name in a sarcastic way, Bowie, and said he wasn't interested. Eric said, "I would say to George, Bowie is wonderful and brilliant and funny, but then George would become very much a Beatle. Oh, Bowie," he would say contemptuously to rhyme with Bow Wow. In 1974, Beatle Fan magazine reported that David Bowie visited George Harrison backstage in Memphis, but that he and Harrison didn't hit it off that well. Also, in a KHJ radio interview with George and John from December 1974, George described how he met Bowie while he was on his Dark Horse tour in Memphis. George said, "I've been in parties where it's full of people who have got the shiniest shoes or the biggest heels or the funniest glasses or the biggest hat. Now I can't get on with scene. I just met David Bowie, who I know Ringo also thinks is great. Now, I don't have any concept of whether he's great or not great. But I met him in Memphis at the Mid-South Coliseum during the Dark Horse tour on November 27, 1974, and he was in the shower room with the band just before we went on to the second show. David Bowie, I said these were my very words, and I hope he wasn't offended by it because all I really meant was what I said, which was, I pulled his hat up from over his eyes and said, 'Hi man, how are you? Nice to meet you.' Pulled his hat up and said, 'Do you mind if I have a look at you? To see what you are, because I've only ever seen those dopey pictures of you. I mean, every picture I've ever seen of David Bowie or Elton John, they just look stupid to me.' John Lennon disagreed with George and said, 'I thought they looked great.' George continued, 'Well, I think he looks dopey. I want to see, who the person is.' Funnily enough, this was just before Lennon and Bowie became friends. Bowie even recorded a cover of George Harrison's Try Some, Buy Some, but the admiration apparently wasn't mutual. George wasn't really taken by Bowie, and it is unclear why he seemed to be dismissive of Bowie. Promoting Reality in 2003, Bowie took pains to say that one of his cover recordings, Try Some, Buy Some, was only an inadvertent homage to its composer, the recently deceased George Harrison. "For me, it was a Ronnie Spector song," he said. "It never really occurred to me that I was actually covering a George Harrison song. It's rather fitting and quite lovely that it is an unwitting tribute to George." Also, David did give small mention to George in his 2002 album Heathen, with its release being on the first-year anniversary of George's death, along with a reference to him in the track Heathen, The Race. Bowie's favorite Beatle, or at least the Beatle who most governed him, had been his friend John Lennon, but reaching his mid-50s, Bowie found Harrison's spirituality alluring, even if he could never bring himself to become a believer or even a gardener. Bowie told Paul Denoya in 2003, "For him, there is a belief in some kind of system, but I really find it hard. Not on a day-to-day basis, because there are habits of life that convince me there is something solid to believe in. But when I became philosophical in those long, lonely hours, it's the source of all my frustrations, hammering away at the same questions I've had since I was 19. Nothing has really changed for me."
Hello.
That was Ringo, folks.
Well, what can I say?
And goodbye
You
from all of
know.
us.
Well, this is Ringo. Everyone seems to have said everything here, so I'll just sign off by saying cheerio and best of luck from the Beatles.